Speaker, after 9 years of these NDP Liberals, taxes are up, costs are up, crime is up, and time's up. 2 years ago, the NDP leaders sold out workers and signed a costly coalition deal with the Liberal Prime Minister. That deal hiked taxes, ballooned food costs, doubled housing prices, unleashed crime and chaos on our once safe streets. Will the Prime Minister finally call a carbon tax election so Canadians can choose between the costly coalition or common sense Conservatives who will axe the carbon tax?
Everyone has an opinion about Canadian federal politics.
Oh, yeah.
Hey gang, what's up? Just Aaron right here, Canadian Looney. So I think maybe I've found the next rising star in the Conservative caucus. This guy, Tom Kmiec, he's an MP from Alberta. Not really a cowboy yet, but this guy just needs a little polishing. He has the raw skills, the tenacity. Let's take a peek. Let's take a look. Tom Kmiec, MP from Alberta. Giddy up.
I will go to Mr. No problem. I'll wait. Mr. Kmiec, floor is yours.
So before I speak to the sub-amendment, I'm just going to say all of the comments that were racist, prejudiced, mean-hearted, evil, those aren't Conservatives. I reject them wholeheartedly. I know my colleagues do as well. You know, I think we all find it really difficult to go through our comments and try to delete every single rude, obnoxious, racist, sexist, prejudiced comment that people make. And we're not all perfect. Can't always get it right. We are responsible for the comments that we make. And I hope people will find that I've always been judicious in the commentary I make because, you know, like I joke, I'm a minority in my own family because my kids are part Jewish, part Chinese. And so I'm very sensitive to like those types of aggressive commentary. And my partner is from Iran. So like I find it very, I see it even on her comments that she sometimes makes publicly where people go and post nasty commentary as well. So we reject them wholeheartedly. They don't represent the Conservative Party of Canada. They don't represent the Conservative movement either. That's easy to say. On the sub-amendment, though, that I moved at the last meeting, now we have a development and a beautiful 12-word non-confidence motion is now available to the House to consider, that the House has lost confidence in this government, and I'd move so, and that we finally have that carbon tax election that this motion calls for now. If it passes with my sub-amendment, which I hope will find agreement from all parties that we do so, I really hope that we can get to the point we can pass this sub-amendment to have a carbon tax election. And in doing so, like, to prepare for this meeting, I did go and look up as many supporting documents as I could from different parliamentarians and legislators at the provincial level to try and persuade my colleagues that my sub-amendment is what the Canadian population wants, because we have 3 provincial elections coming up. And in all of them, the carbon tax will feature prominently as the main issue, or it'll be a carbon tax election. When you have Premier David Eby agreeing and now saying that basically he wants to abandon their own retail carbon tax in British Columbia, that's a carbon tax election. And I think it's incumbent upon us as parliamentarians to accept my sub-amendment that will go along with the main motion that will basically tell the House that we want a carbon tax election. Now, I know I've now heard that there's rumblings that perhaps this non-confidence motion that's being moved in the House will get support from one of the other opposition parties. That's regrettable. I hope they change their mind. They have many, many more days to be persuaded of that. But in the interim, we could approve my sub-amendment, and we could still report it back to the House. Mm-hmm. And as I've asked the clerks at the table, since I sit so close to them, it would be a novel way of inducing perhaps another non-confidence in the government through this report that we would table after the motion is passed. So some commentary from the BC Premier and NDP leader David Eby to scrap the carbon tax in British Columbia. This appeared in the Vancouver Sun on September 12th. I'm just going to quote him here. These are direct quotes. A lot of British Columbians are struggling with affordability. The political consensus we had in British Columbia has been badly damaged by the approach of the federal government. So if it decides to remove the legal backstop requiring us to have a consumer carbon tax in BC, we will end the consumer carbon tax in BC. Eby argued that large increases to the federal tax.
Point of order, Mr. Chang.
Mr. Chair, I don't understand the relevance of Mr. Kmiec's comment about carbon tax. It has no relevance to Bill C-71. That's the matter before us that we're debating. And what he's talking about is completely not connected to the matter before us.
Mr. Chang, Mr. Kmiec has the floor. Mr. Kmiec, please continue.
Thank you, Chair. So the relevance to my colleague across the way is my sub-amendment to the main motion is exactly on the carbon tax election, and I'm quoting back to him a seasoned politician on the NDP side who is saying that he's facing a carbon tax election in British Columbia, and that's what the public wants. So I'm trying to remind my colleague across the way through you, Chair, that we need a carbon tax election, and that's why I have a sub-amendment on this exact subject before this committee, so that we can have a carbon tax election and submit ourselves to accountability from voters, from Canadian citizens who will get to pick who will represent them in the 45th Parliament, in our next Parliament. And I'm more than happy to do that right away. My residents back home are enthusiastic about having a carbon tax election. And I'll go back to quoting now Premier Eby, who is less enthusiastic about facing the electorate in his home province because they're upset at the carbon tax, and they're specifically, more so I'd say, angry at the federal government for forcing British Columbia to keep a carbon tax because of the federal backstop legislation that forces every single province that doesn't have a carbon tax to have a price imposed directly upon them. So Premier Eby has clearly said that should there not be a federal backstop, they would abandon the British Columbia punishing carbon tax. And it's really convenient for him to say this so late in his term and so close to a provincial election day. And I think it's, of interest to the committee, especially, I think, to our chair, who happens to be from the beautiful province of British Columbia, through which I backpacked for 2 weeks over the summer with my kids. And that's why this is important. So this is the last quote I have from Premier Eby before I move to other provinces. So Eby argued that large increases to the federal tax, now $80 a ton as of April 1st is, to use another quotation, unsustainable. And that's what I heard at doors when I was door knocking in communities in North Vancouver, in Burnaby, in Delta, Vancouver Granville, Vancouver proper, not Surrey. Don't worry, Chair, I didn't make it out to Surrey to door knock, but I did door knock in Westminster, visited a lot of different groups as well. Door knocked also in Seymour, North Burnaby, a few spots, just to make sure that I heard directly from British Columbians, and what they were saying at the doors as well is many of them wanted just that, what this sub-amendment has, a carbon tax election. So moving on to my home province of Alberta, and it's an unusual day. I think my colleagues from Alberta always agree when we're quoting NDP MLAs, but I'm going to quote some NDP MLAs now. The Alberta NDP MLA and former leadership candidate Raki Pancholi spoke against the carbon tax, and this was reported earlier this year, before my sub-amendment even came to grace this committee to have a carbon tax election. On February 9th, 2024, reported in Calgary Herald, she said the following: "It may be time to move beyond a consumer carbon price and focus more on the things that do work," which again is an implication that carbon tax does not work, and that we should abandon it. This is another quote. "I've been having many conversations with leading climate activists in our province, experts in this area, and we need to continue those conversations to say what would that climate plan look like without a consumer carbon price." Sounds to me like she was shying away from a retail carbon tax being imposed, which is exactly the point of my motion, of my amendment, the sub-amendment to the main motion is to have a carbon tax election. I think it's perfectly reasonable that we time this report back and its impact on C-71 legislation before it would come to this committee. I'll note that the government obviously finds no urgency in passing C-71 because it's not up for debate as far as I can tell today. It wasn't up for debate yesterday. I don't see it on notice for tomorrow's business. In fact, I don't think it's on the business for several more days. And the government saw no great urgency from the moment it tabled it in May to have it debated at any time in May or June before it came here. And I'll also remind members here that this committee was in public in a multi-meeting filibuster from the Liberal side. And I heard many people comment yesterday that the bad Conservatives were delaying C-71. There's no delay happening. Members are debating in the House the merits of the bill, the contents of the bill. And then I also heard the other side of the argument, which is Conservatives take too much time at committee to do their work. Like, I will continue to do the work the residents of Calgary-Shepherd expect me to do, which is to represent them. And my residents in my riding, my sub-amendment is exactly what they want to see. The contents of it, every single word that's in my email inbox. They want to have a non-confidence vote. They want a carbon tax election, which is what my sub-amendment would deliver for them. Because I am going to go back this weekend. I'm going to go to my Veterans Walk in Glenmore Park. I'm going to go to the Church of Latter-day Saints for the Calgary food drive that they do for the whole city. And when I meet my residents, my constituents, my voters, they're going to ask me, what did you do for us this week? And I'm going to tell them, I moved at the committee that we report back to the House that we have a carbon tax election. And they'll be like, Tom, great. That's exactly what we sent you to Ottawa for. That's what we sent you to Parliament for. That's what we want. We're tired of the government. We want to see it replaced. We want to have a say. And that's what this would give them by being reported back. It places conditions on the main motion. That's exactly what my residents want to see. I have another quote I want to provide you from a different Alberta NDP MLA, one that I actually met at the Alberta Legislature briefly when we were waiting in a line to greet the President of the Republic of Poland. So I got a chance to meet, I think, one of her kids. She got a chance to meet my kids and was just talking family issues. So I'm going to be quoting here Alberta NDP MLA and leadership candidate Sarah Hoffman, who spoke out against the carbon tax. This is CTV Edmonton, February 11th, 2024. I think the consumer carbon tax is dead. So we need to find new tools that are successful. Nobody's on board with the Prime Minister, with what the Prime Minister did with the federal carbon tax. He absolutely broke trust and broke confidence when he looked at the polls in Eastern Canada and decided to exempt them. This third quote, there's no way people can be on board with the federal plan when even the Prime Minister isn't on board, when he's playing games with it. So even the Alberta NDP agrees, I think, with my sub-amendment. Like the purpose is, let's have a carbon tax election federally. Let's get this resolved. Let the voting public pick. They can make a decision. I believe in the wisdom of crowds. I believe that voters always have the best say. They get to choose who represents them. I hope they will. I hope that I can continue to earn their trust, like we all hope we can continue to earn their trust and continue to represent them in our national parliament. It is a great privilege to do so. And I think that's exactly what Sarah Hoffman here was speaking to. She was speaking to the fact that the Prime Minister had even abandoned the federal carbon tax. Premier Eby had talked about the fact that if there had been a backstop in law, he would have abandoned it as well. And that's what the sub-amendment proposes to do, is to just move it up to the House and have the House confirm the committee's report to say not before a carbon tax election happens, because that's what the public wants to see. And I think it's critically important. And with that, Chair, I'm going to stop my comments here. I have more comments. I want to note a letter from the Public School Boards Association of Alberta that represents all the public school boards who wrote to me and other Conservative members of Parliament specifically about the impact of the carbon tax on schools in my home province. But I'll leave it at that, Chair, and I'll cede the floor.
Thank you very much. Mr. Dalton, go ahead, please.
Everyone has an opinion about Canadian federal politics.
Oh, yeah.
So, gang, what do you think? Is Tom Kmiec possibly one of the next up-and-comers in the Liberal caucus? We'll have to wait and see. We need an election first. My name's Aaron. This is Canadian Looney. We have a great time here learning about Canadian federal politics. We have a great live show, amazing chat room. Come and check that out. You'll enjoy the chat room. I assure you will. And that is it. Till the next video, thank you very much for watching this one. Tom Kmiec is a guy to watch. Heads up. Anyhow, this is Aaron from Canadian Looney. Take care. Have a good night. Catch you next video.